Welcome back to the Changing Room Podcast. I'm your host, Arbella Kappas. Thanks for being here. So today's guest is Whitney Anderson Rooney, who is an interior designer and creative artist here in the Cleveland area. And I'm very excited for you guys to hear our discussion. We forayed into the topics of home decor, interior design, how to find your personal home style, and also how it blends with your own style and how you get dressed. She also had a lot of kernels of wisdom about having a creative business. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get into the conversation. All right. Hi, Whitney. Welcome to the Changing Room Podcast. Thanks so much for being here. I'm very excited to have you on and just, dig into some, conversations. And the first question we ask here for every guest, and especially if you're listening on audio, definitely switch to video viewing right now, because this is when we're going to break down outfits. But I ask everyone, tell me about your outfit that you're wearing right now. Are there any cool stories, any cool details? Just tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You've had so many stylish people on here, and not being in the fashion industry, it's a little intimidating.
You are so stylish. You really are. Just don't worry about it.
Well, so this dress, I had a completely different outfit picked initially, but it's in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I'm a heat baby. I'm not, summer's not my season.
Yeah.
So the Muumuu came out, and this is a Ghani dress that I got on final sale from Essence.
Love.
So it's just it's so comfortable. I love, it's got the tonal kind of floral pattern.
I love that.
Florals aren't typically my thing, but I love that it's only the finish that kind of shows the pattern from it. This shirt jacket I got from Main Street Modern's vintage shop. So if you know Main Street Modern, it's in Canton. It's an amazing vintage furniture and home accessories shop. But in the last couple of years, they've opened a little clothing store, vintage clothing store. And I found this. It's this awesome worn in leather.
I love it.
And it was $15.
Oh my God.
I honestly wonder if it was mismarked. I was that is coming with me.
Maybe it was missing a zero or something.
Honestly,
because that's nice. It's suede. That seems good quality. You can tell from how I don't know, heavy it feels.
Yeah, and it's that perfect kind of, it's a shirt jacket, so it's got a really good weight to it, and the texture is as much as I'm gonna wear it, I know that it's not gonna deteriorate at all. And I have this little neck scarf that I got from Cool Water Dry Goods.
Oh yeah.
So I love her shop so much. All vintage clothes in Tremont, and I can't walk in there without buying something. And
I still haven't been there yet. She opened. How long has she been open for?
It's less than a year, but
I still haven't gone there yet, and I'm so sad. I've visited her racks a couple times, at a market or something, and she's got a really good eye for stuff. So I definitely want to stop in.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of it feels like a lot of military varsity, a little bit Americana, all natural fabrics. This is silk, and just good colors. Everything's so nicely worn in.
Yes.
That it's I don't know where she sources, but the quality is so amazing.
I agree. I feel she has a lot of utilitarian stuff too, things that are either you said worn in or kind of invites you to wear it in. And I love that. Where are your sandals from? Are they? What's the name of that brand?
Suicoke.
Suicoke. Are they?
They are.
Yes, I knew it.
Yeah, these are another Essence find that I got on super sale. They're honestly my favorite sandals. I don't know. The older I get, comfort really matters. I just I'm at the point where I'm not gonna compromise style for comfort or comfort for style, and if I can find it's Velcro, and this super rubbery absorbent platform, But yeah, their colors are really cool. They've got like really funky ones. I remember you almost bought a pair.
Yes, from Recollection.
Yes.
I was so close to. It was one of those where it was kind of like not like a fisherman's sandal like this, but it was like closed toed up here, and I just wasn't. I'm glad I didn't get those because I wasn't ready to commit to that. But I just want like a classic pair like that, so I should check out Essence. I don't shop Essence that much, but I'm trying to like explore it more. In terms of resale, I usually, I don't know, lean towards like the real and stuff, but I'm trying to get, because they have good sales and like quite often
they do.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you know your size, you can get some really good final sale stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's what this Ghani dress was.
Love Ghani.
Yeah, their stuff is like, to me, it's like that perfect mix of like pushing boundaries, but like it's still super versatile, and there's like a classic timeless feel to it too.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw you a curveball question now. I'm sorry, but is there anything on your like Essence wish list right now that you're loving or recently, like, I don't know, was in your cart or I don't know, just anything you're like loving recently?
I mean, carts stay full.
Yes.
It's really like, it's a problem. And, you know, I'll edit them down and, yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, I'll pull the trigger and decide, okay, I'm going to order this stuff. And, you know, you always check, like, make sure you can return things if it doesn't fit.
Yes. Yeah.
Or if it's like brands that are on final sale, like knowing your sizes. One thing I will say about Essence is like they're fantastic on giving like correct measurements. So like when you look at a lot of brands, like in the size charts, it'll kind of give you some like a general thing, like a large is a 12 to 14 or 10 to 12 or, you know, and it's like, what does that really mean? Because sizing is like so subjective.
It is.
But Essence will like give you the exact measurements. Like I've taken off a pair of pants and like measured it before, ordered a pair of jeans, and then they fit perfectly.
That's good. Yeah, because I feel like other places it can be hard because like medium can mean a completely different thing brand to brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's in my cart? So a shoe brand that I found on Essence is called Toga Pula. Ooh. And it's a Japanese brand with Western influence. And it's got a lot of their pieces, you know, it's like sandals, loafers, boots, slides, usually all leather, but they get really into embellishment. So it's got like the kind of sensibility of like Japanese style, but then like the embellishments are totally Western. So buckles or like little icon jewels kind of all over them. And I almost wore a pair of their shoes today, but again, it was hot. But.
Is it those like mule type shoes that you have that would follow the little embellishments? Okay, I've seen you wearing those. Is that the brand?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. It's like blending like, that practicality with, you know, a little bit of zhuzh. That's definitely, and it goes well with like how you don't want to sacrifice comfort. So you definitely can have both. That's good. Yeah.
So there's definitely going to be more Toga Pula shoes in the future, and those often do go on sale too. But yeah, that's probably like the main thing in the cart. I have to find a dress for a wedding soon, and that brings all the anxiety because.
Why?
I don't like shopping for specific things.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Just like do you like to browse more?
Yeah, like I feel like forced shopping it kind of sets you up for failure sometimes. Like if you're out there looking for something very specific, then it's really hard, I think, to like find exactly what you're looking for. And I'm noticing that like a lot of dresses, like I know I want a midi dress. I know I want something with sleeves. But like I'm not typically like a floral person. You see a lot of florals right now. There's a lot of like really feminine details, like the sleeper style dresses with like the puffy sleeves or, you know, like kind of a ruffled, like a tiered ruffle skirt or something like that. And that tends to not be what I'm a little bit more like masculine, androgynous. Like this dress is kind of as feminine as I typically get.
Yeah. And kind of with that, what's like, how would you describe your style? And you can describe this in any way, like by even saying like what inspires you. But just like, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so I do love menswear. But being, petite and curvy, it gets like really tricky. Like I can't typically go thrifting and buy like men's pants or something. Or even like a lot of vintage women's pants. Like they have like a very straight fit that they don't accommodate for curves. And being 5'1", like everything would have to be like hemmed to infinity. Like, So I found like a couple of brands, particularly for pants, that like accommodate shorter lengths, but have like the cuts that I'm like mostly like a trouser cut. Either like something with like a pleat in the front or like a flat front with like back pockets or something like that. So like big bud press has been such a go-to.
Yeah. I have one of their jumpsuits, and I was actually eyeing one of their pants. They're more structured pants actually, because I feel like a lot of my pants are more on the baggy side. But now for fall, I realize I want a pant that's like jeans but not jeans, but pants but not, like kind of like a denim material, but they're not jeans. And they have some really cool designs, and I feel like their size, I feel like they have a good variety of sizing usually.
Yeah, it's really nice whenever it's like size inclusive and it's not just like, the standard sizes versus plus size. I kind of tend to be somewhere in the middle there, which ends up being like really challenging, especially like because they're fitting for different body types. It's not like they're just expanding the size. Like the assumption is that like your body also changes shape when you get into plus size. So like they're accommodating for like more curves instead of it's just like a straight cut then just expanding it. So yeah, it can be tricky to find like those perfect pants for me, but big bud press has been a big one. There's a brand called Rusha that I probably an Instagram ad got me, but they also have like super good sales, and they make short sizes as well. And then, I do love thrifting when it comes to like a button-down shirt, a good t-shirt, a good sweater, pullover, blazers. And then we have, you've had so many people on your show who like do this great curation of, vintage and secondhand clothes. And so like, honestly, I shop with, Olivia, who you had, Leanne. Like I have pieces from them and...
Yeah. I just love that. I've always said this, but it's like how they all have kind of slightly different styles, slightly different curation. And it's kind of, you go into it, how like maybe you're looking for something specific, but you also are kind of, maybe surprised, And again, I'm still very interested how you said that, looking for something specific can kind of, do you feel like it kind of kills the creativity aspect of shopping a bit, or is it just you're overthinking it too much? Because I feel like for me, that can sometimes happen when I'm like, I can't see anything else when I'm trying to find something specific.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both, especially with like, for like wedding dress shopping. Like that's not something that like I know that I'm going to wear often. So I also have like more restrictions with like price points. I can find a dress, but they don't have it in my size, so it does get tricky, I think, when you're looking for something specific. There's some like really timeless brands that, if you want some like you want a nice leather jacket, you can, and you want to splurge a little bit, like a shot jacket is always going to be like a good investment, something like that. So if it's like a broader piece, I feel like you can like know the trusted brands to go to and get. But yeah, for me, like these dresses for weddings are just like the most stressful thing.
Yeah, I get that, because it's also, like you said, things that you might only wear once. Like for me, special occasion dress, like shopping in general, can be so stressful because I get into this like hole all the time. I haven't had really any weddings recently. I have one next year that I'm already like almost planning for now, because I'm like, and you want something that's like versatile to a point, but it's also has to be, you know, appropriate and all that. So yeah, it can be hard with like occasion dressing, but I don't know, I think sometimes it's like we gotta just embrace like being able to repeat dresses.
Oh, yeah.
I think one thing I've been thinking about a lot is like I feel like there's certain pieces of clothing I just hold too preciously. Like I'm like, this is a special dress. Like I can only wear this like for like something important because I just get so emotionally attached. But and I guess that's like nice sometimes to do, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are meant to be worn.
Yeah, I have a few things like that. Well, I was repeating like my one like wedding dress for a while. And so I feel like it's time to get a new one. So maybe that's like also the pressure. Yeah. And I'll wear it for the next, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, whatever.
That's good though. Yeah. New era of like wedding guest dress for sure. And I guess we can go into like the main question. So could you tell me basically okay, now I'm kind of tripping up. So you work in interior design. So tell me a little bit about how long you've worked in this field, kind of how your business started. Just give me a little background and we'll dive in.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a leap. I technically started my business about 2.5 years ago, which honestly doesn't sound very long. I worked for like a lot of creative small businesses prior to that. And I think working for yourself, starting your business feels very, very intimidating. But I was often in like operations positions with these small businesses. And so kind of what I saw is that there were a lot of people who were just taking the leap. Like they didn't have all the answers. They didn't, you know, they were learning on the job, you know? And that was really inspiring to me. And so I started having this thought of like, I'd really like to work for myself. And so when I built my house, which was a huge, huge journey. I mean, like that's a crazy first project for like any designer. And at the time I wasn't a designer. I'm just, you know, a regular person who, you know, my husband and I were looking for a home, couldn't find anything that we liked in our price range. Come to find out, now this is pre-pandemic, so take all of like this with a grain of salt because the industry has shifted so much since then. I mean, in anything housing, real estate related, you know? But yeah, we couldn't find anything, and come to find out, like once we started getting quotes, is that we were actually able to like afford to build our own house for a price that was actually more affordable than like buying an existing home, especially if we were gonna like need to rehab or renovate it, which I mean, I was probably not gonna be cool with like some of the decisions that someone else had made for the house. And also just wanting to be in the city, and a lot of like the popular neighborhoods, there's so many flips. And, you know, again, like wasn't going to be super cool about like those decisions. And so, yeah, we decided to build, and it was a huge undertaking, but like, I mean, I learned overnight basically, faster than I would have if I had like started taking on small client projects little by little. So after that, you know, I felt really confident in what I had learned, or confident enough that like I started taking on like a couple of clients where I really didn't charge much. And it was like, hey, I will help you out, but it's also going to be like a learning experience for me. And like I found people who were totally cool with that. You know, they were kind of looking for help, but they're like, I don't have the budget to hire like an interior design firm, but I'm also overwhelmed with like all of these decisions that I have to make when you're rehabbing a house or a room or whatever it is, because you're investing so much money, and it's a lot. It's a lot of decision making.
And in terms of like what you help your clients with, how much is it like kind of like stylistic advice versus kind of like the kind of, pardon my term, like unsexy decisions, you know, because obviously, again, like you said, with like building your own house and designing your own house, like it was like an all-in-one project. But how much of it is between those kind of two, I don't know, spheres, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I try to do is like make sure that the client is like a good fit for me, but I don't necessarily need it to like prescribe to like a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of what I mean by that is like, that's always varied with different projects. Like some feel a little bit more technical or process driven, and some are like much more about aesthetic. Like, you know, I have a lot of clients that come to me and they have a good understanding of their style. I'll be honest, like those are the ones that I really love working with because they're a little bit more decisive, but they tend to be a little bit more adventurous too. They're like, okay, this is what I like and I want to dig into it. And so like you're already here. And so when I want to push a boundary, I can take it a little bit further. And that's not everyone. So a lot of people, they come to me and they're like, I don't really have a good sense of my style at all. And so like, I call it like the discovery phase. So it's like in the beginning, we're getting to dig in on their style because everyone does have style. They'll say that they don't, but when you start presenting things to them, they will have a reaction. They'll say they hate something or, you know, be indifferent or like, you know, like they do have reactions.
That's how I feel about clothes too. Like whenever people say like, I don't care about clothes, I don't care about what I wear, it's like, but you do. Like you probably deep down do. Like it's just, you maybe aren't thinking about it, but when you're again presented with these options, like by like your style is revealed by what you choose and also what you avoid. Yeah. So it's definitely, I feel like similar. So that's interesting how there's the different kinds of clients, like between like the ones that are like sure and the ones that are less sure. What else was I gonna say? But yeah, that's so you're also kind of now entering a new exciting phase, which is opening up a studio space. So how did that come to be? Kind of what made you want to make the decision to have your own studio space, and you know, anything else you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I've been working out of my house, which, you know, when you're starting a business, I feel like that's like pretty common. And, you know, doing painting as well. I've got a ton of materials and whether it's like samples for interior design, like at this point I have like bins and bins of like tile samples and countertop samples. And I mean, just like all of this stuff that like you don't even think about acquiring when you're starting this business. Like
I bet
every client is going to need different things put in front of them. And so you do want to begin, you know, a lot of, you know, we call it a library, you know, you do want to begin your material library. And those things are really important because they'll inspire you. They give you more options to bring in front of clients. I mean, it can be a lot of stuff.
Wow. I never thought about that. I feel like most people maybe usually assume it's all digital. Like, oh, just look at photos of tile, but it's definitely important to have the physical items. That's crazy. So you just have a bunch of tiles, wood, and that's crazy.
Yeah. So definitely like outgrowing space. Like I have a little, you know, I call it an office, a studio, a library. I mean, it's kind of like a one room fits all space in my house. I would like to bring it back to something that resembles more of an office library instead of like my work area. So between that and like the painting that I do, you know, I just throw a drop cloth down at home.
Yeah.
Which is not the safest when you're like, you know, I'm kind of careless when I paint sometimes. Like I don't really work with a ton of precision. So like I will fling paint places, which is not good for furniture and things like that. And just wanting to like scale up in both of these, you know, different respects in both design and painting, just needing the space for that. But also you know, kind of going back to like having worked in operations for small businesses, I loved being in that supporting role for like really talented creative people. So one thing that I wanted to do is have a space that was bigger than just for me so that it could be shared with other creatives. So this is like, yes, it is my studio, but it's also like a collective. So obviously Courtney was on here before. So she's my studio partner, and her and I worked together for a long time at Fount, which is amazing because we know already what it's like to share space together.
Yeah.
And we loved it before. So I think we're both really excited to like do this together. But there's also like additional space in the studio that we're going into where, you know, we want to rent out like for short-term artist residence, so that, you know, if someone's kind of in the same boat as us, they've been working out of their home for a while, maybe they're not ready to get like a solo studio retail space, but we've got kind of this like very like individualized little nook that's like a perfect spot for someone to like try out, you know, their medium for, you know, a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, and in like a really affordable way.
That's so exciting.
So, you know, we want it to feel like a community.
Yeah.
You know, and we have the space to do pop-ups. So, you know, we're going into 78th Street. So obviously Third Fridays are like still really well attended. So like we have the ability to bring in people for pop-ups within our studio. So like I want it to feel full, you know, like there's a community there, like it's a space where you want to like spend time, you know, so.
I love that so much. Yeah, I didn't know about or maybe I did a little bit, but just about how you're going to have like a rotating variety of people too, and give different people a chance for like that extra space. So that's really cool. Yeah, I feel like that's such I don't know. I think that just makes it so much more exciting when it's like kind of this like welcoming community. And you and Courtney are like, could not be a better like match, obviously. I was thinking about how like picking like a studio partner, you know, collective partner like this is probably as intimate as picking like a roommate, because it's like, you know, it's different kind of space you're sharing, but you know, it's good you guys have that already rapport and all that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak for Courtney, but I don't think either of us are like feel in any way concerned with sharing space with each other. We've agreed on a lot of like, you know, stylistic stuff for the space. You know, we found really fun ways to like mesh our style. You know, like I'll put like a little mock-up together of something for the studio, but I can recognize like the nods to her style in there as well. And so it feels really good. And, you know, I wouldn't say that we have the same style, but like, you know, in that Venn diagram, like there's definitely spaces where we overlap. And I think it's going to feel like a space for both of us. And I think it's going to feel hopefully like it has an identity, but where a lot of other people can also come in and feel like what they're making, what they like also can fit in well too.
I love that. And like, you kind of mentioned how, yeah, obviously like you are, outgrowing your own space, like in it seems like more ways than one, like, you know, obviously like it's all the stuff you have, but I was curious to ask you, because this is something I've been kind of reckoning myself with, like my own writing. And I've also talked to, like, I have a good friend, Nikki, who's a designer, and so she makes clothes, and, you know, she makes clothes out of her house, you know, and it's like, I feel like probably everybody has like a different, you know, relationship to their art. And obviously a lot of us are doing things from home. Like, have you found that or I guess you haven't, you know, had the studio for a while yet, but like, do you feel like, you know, the spaces we have to like create art needs to be like separate than where we live, or even where we work? Well, I guess your work is kind of one and the same sometimes, but do you think those separations are important with, like, I don't know, giving yourself that space?
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be better for work-life balance because I'm kind of in my, I'm not kind of, I mean, I am in my busiest season with design, just having like the most projects right now. And there are so many nights where, you know, I'm a night owl. I could work till 2 a.m. if I didn't have someone else in the house that was like, hey, do you want to hang out? Or like, like there have been times like even just this past week where it's like midnight and I'm still like working on my computer because my head's in it. And I would love that separation. In terms of art, I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm really excited. Like I am not professionally trained in either of these avenues. And art was so unexpected. Like I did not plan to have this as part of my business whatsoever. I feel like I fell into it. So I don't really know what I'm doing there.
Yeah.
So if something turns out good and someone likes it, like that's really cool to me. Like, you know, it's really weird too. So I'm very curious to see like having more space to work and all that, where things aren't piled on top of each other and I can visually see everything more out in the open. I can like spend more time looking at it. I can have like some nice natural lighting, you know?
Yeah. So important.
What's going to happen? You know, I have a plan for that in terms of my art, but I'm just like really excited to see like where that goes, because all of what I'm doing right now is a leap, you know?
And I admire that so much, because I think a lot of times it's like, and this can apply to not just like creatives, but in general, like I think, you know, we can get stuck in like an over planning phase. Like, okay, I need to get all my ducks in a row, you know, and, you know, that can mean like going to school, getting this training, getting this, getting that, you know, and, you know, there is a certain amount of like, I guess fake it till you make it, but also it's like it's just about doing and taking the first step. Because I wouldn't say you faked it till you made it, because you did the work, you know, but I don't know, I feel like you took that, you also had to take a leap, you know?
Yeah.
Because you learned by doing, you know, there's only so many like to-do lists you can make until you know the outcome, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I am not a fan of fake it till you make it. I'll be honest, like that's something that, I mean, I'm sure we all have to do it in our lives to some extent. You know, confidence is not something that comes naturally for like the average person. But transparency is like one of the biggest things for me. And so when I was starting out and I'm thinking about like, you know, I'm taking on a client and maybe it's like my first or second client, I want them to be aware of that. You know, I want them to be aware that I don't, you know, at the time I didn't have the tools and the knowledge and the industry knowledge and the connections with vendors and contractors and brands and my trade accounts and all of that stuff. I didn't have those things established on day one. And so, yeah, I wanted them to like be fully aware of that before they committed. And, you know, I don't want to overpromise something.
And I love that, because I think sometimes people are afraid to be transparent because they're so scared of coming off as not experienced enough.
Right.
But, you know, it sounds like you know, it's just good to be open and, you know, earnest about like, here's what I know, here's what I don't know, here's what I can help you with. If you don't want to work together, let's, you know, put a pin in it, you know? So I think that honesty, I really admire for sure. And the fact that you're like transparent, but also still like moving forward. You don't let it like stop you. It seems like, oh, I don't have this experience, so I'm just not going to do anything, you know?
Yeah.
Because then it's like,
I think that a lot of that has come with age. Like I think that, you know, my business sounds young, but I'm relatively young, but I'm not, you know, I'm not a fresh out of college designer or something. So I think that, just kind of like the awareness and a sense of confidence and a sense of self that you get like as you get older has really helped me, because you're interacting with people in their homes. I mean, a lot of this is a little some high level stuff, but you're coming and meeting people where they are. And to be able to do that with all different kinds of people, a lot of couples, which is a funny thing. It does take some humility. Like if you came in and you knew it all, which you can be an expert in what you do know, but you don't know them, and you don't know their style, and you don't. What are their friction points? Like someone might give you a budget, but like maybe they can spend more. Maybe they are price sensitive. Like I like to ask, like, what are your saves versus splurges? Like, what do you really want to invest in? Couples don't always have the same style. So reconciling their differences on that,
it's like home design therapy.
There's a level of mediation that comes with it sometimes. And you kind of just have to be prepared for all of that. So I think like being, well into my 30s at this point has helped me sort of navigate those obstacles that you think that you're going in and you're designing something that sounds really exciting, and you might have an awareness of like the process is hard. But there's all of these like secondary things that are part of this job that you will not ever learn in a classroom, until you got into people's homes.
Yes. I've always felt the same way too about like I got my degree in journalism, but everyone who I know who's like also either does any kind of like technical writing or journalism, they're like, the degree could be just not even non-existent. Like at the end of the day, you have to get in the trenches, you have to do the interviews, got to do the fact checking. So yeah, I feel like it's true for a lot of professions and careers, and yeah.
And not to say like I love education. Like I will, but I already have a master's degree, and in an unrelated field. And so, no, I did not want to go back to school, and if I could figure this out without doing that, and taking on appropriate projects, given my current skill set, then I feel good about that.
I love that. What's your degree in? I'm just curious.
Well, undergrad was international affairs.
Really?
And master's is urban planning.
Oh, okay. Well, urban, it's adjacent definitely to homes and development and all that. And wow, interesting. Yeah, I almost did international relations, but it required I already have a second language. I know Lithuanian, but it like required like learning 2 more new languages. And I was like, I'd rather just learn it on my own instead of possibly fail out of a whole major.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
Well, I guess my little Florida State school did not require that. So, yeah, I didn't have to do that. Yeah, I studied abroad in London. So cool. English speaking.
Oh, there you go. So,
yeah. So there was not a language barrier there. But, it's kind of funny, like, you would think art and design are more common someone's hobbies. And so I've done the complete opposite. So I've made it my business and, being active in my community. Then I make urban planning my hobby. And it works.
Exactly. Whatever balances it out. Well, it's funny because, my last guest, Olivia, I had no idea. And I had worked with her at one point, but I had no idea that she, because I've just viewed her as this like, she's just really a force in like the vintage community and retail, small business community here in Cleveland. And like, I just always assumed like she had like some kind of either fashion background or like fashion merchandising or something. But when we were talking, she had studied interior design, and and it was just interesting to know that background because I don't know. I think in general it's funny how much weight we put on schooling and and I love education too. I've always been a bit of a bookworm, but only with like the subjects I really like basically English like was my favorite. I'm like I could just read books and talk about them, and that was just like if that's the class, that no problem. But it's always interesting how much weight is put on it, and especially associated with like when you tie it in with like all the money you have to spend on it, it adds this like pressure that like, okay, well, this is the rest of your life based on this thing you studied. So I think then maybe some people are sometimes stuck in like a place, especially when they want to start a creative endeavor, like, oh, well, it has to be, I can't do this because I studied this. And in other words, it's just really inspiring to see all the work you've done and just how you're, you know, have it all, like, I don't know, how you've been doing it all. So not doing it all, but you know what I mean. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's very cliche to say, but it really is like taking it day by day. And there's like this, I don't, maybe I've said this to you in like past conversations, but I'm not going to quote it precisely, but like there's something that says like we overestimate what we can take on in a day, but kind of underestimate what we can do in a year or accomplish in a year. And so I always think about that. Like we go into like our days or our weeks with like these laundry lists of tasks that we want to do, things we want to accomplish. And like we're probably setting ourselves up for like a little bit of failure. We're not going to get all of that done. But then like you look back and like what you can do in a year, you know, you look back to last year, the year before, and you're like, wow, I have done so much more. I know so much more than I did then. And, you know, so it really is just like do a little bit at a time.
Yeah. I love that. Another thing, I don't know where I heard this, or it's just a simple mantra that I've been telling myself, which is just life is long. I feel like we usually tell ourselves that life is short, and that motivates us to like do more, do now, whatever. But I've been kind of going the opposite way and telling myself life is long, aka like take your time, take it slow, because I would rather really soak up like every day and just everything that I want to do and give myself the breathing room to do everything instead of being like, life is short, do everything now, you know? Yeah. So I've been trying to shift that a bit with everything creative I've been doing, and allowing yourself like the different phases you go through in your life. Like it's like, okay, it's okay if your 30s are one thing and then your 40s are something else, and you know, it's like, so yeah, I've just been telling myself that too. Yeah.
No, I think that that's great. Like I kind of feel like I've lived multiple lives at this point, you know, and it's so fun to look back at those different times, reconnect with them, you know, whether it's people, place, whatever. Like, you know, I'm a native Floridian, you know, which feels like a lifetime ago. But when I go back to visit, I can like tap back into it so
I know
quickly. And, you know, it is hard to like, and you have a lot of different creative endeavors as well. And I think when you have these different avenues, your brain is being forced to switch gears so often. Mm-hmm. And if you don't give yourself the time and space to like check out for a little bit, zone out, like, I mean, it will crush you.
Yes.
You know, you have
the very thing you love will crush you.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to like give yourself that like time to like do none of it. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, you might not get burnt out on one thing individually, but just like mentally, physically, like you're gonna run out of steam.
Yep, and that is so true. And I think it's not something that people, I guess, warn you enough about, I guess, when you're starting like those creative endeavors, because it's like, well, it's just something you love, so you'll always have the motivation to do it. And I came of age during kind of like, I guess as the internet has dubbed it, like kind of the girl boss era of like, you can do it all. You can, you know, get a job that you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. That was something I was raised on, which I think was in response to like the boomer era of like just work, put your nose to the grindstone, whatever. But the problem with, you know, work, you know, choose a job you love and never work a day in your life, which is, that's a lie. It's like, no, you know, and that's something I've been reckoning with for a while with like writing and then also other things. And it's so true. It's so true. You can't push yourself to the brink like that because, yeah. Yeah,
like I haven't traveled very much since I started this business, you know? One day I'd like to do that again. It used to be, I mean, it still is like a huge priority for me. But like I have to be okay that that's like not part of like current life right now.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, you definitely can't have it all at once. Mm-mm. And how exhausting to even try to do that.
Oh, no. And I was literally at that point at one point in college, like truly trying to have it all. Like, and I was like convinced like this is possible. I can do it all. I can like work at my college magazine and do this and do that. And I burnt out. And also, I mean, like your body, I can't remember if I... This is gonna sound so stupid. I can't remember if I made this up or I read it somewhere, but I think I read it somewhere. But I say it all the time too. It's like your body sets a boundary if you don't. Like if you don't set a boundary in your life, your body will. Like it will, and it will come up out of the blue. It's like through a backache or through fatigue or feeling nauseous. Your body's like no. Like if you are pushing yourself way too hard. So yeah, you gotta listen.
Yeah, well, or some of my like little, when I'm like really stressed or anxious, like I'm in these periods now. Like sometimes I'll like cry over the stupidest shit, where it's like, where did that come from? But it really is just everything bubbling up. Yep. But then it's like amazing after because you just let it all out.
I just saw TikTok about that actually, where it was like, I don't know, it's just like somebody like euphorically dancing and being like me after I had a good cry, a first good cry in like 3 months. And it's like so true. So true.
Like this is not at all related to any of our questions, and we can like fully stop this conversation after. But recently I picked like an argument with my husband because he didn't want to go to a Mexican restaurant that I wanted to go to that evening. And I was saying like I just needed like a break and how nice I thought having chips and salsa and margaritas sounded. And I wanted that so bad. And I got upset. And then we went.
No, I know the feeling because sometimes I am like, I need this specific thing right now because I know it will fix my mood. And if I don't get it, all hell breaks loose. I know the feeling completely. No, but I love when like the conversations kind of turn into I don't know. I feel like this podcast, it's about a lot of things. That's why I've been having trouble with creating like a tagline. Like everybody has like a tagline or a thing they say at the beginning. I've been kind of saying like this for the stylish and the curious, because I think style is infused in so many parts of our lives. Like it's how we express ourselves, how we organize our lives, how we decorate our lives. So I guess with that being said,
let's get back.
I guess like in terms of I've been kind of in my own journey lately in the last couple years of finally injecting real true style into my home, into our home, mine and my partner's Evan's. And like it has been hard because there's like a lot of, we won't get into the deep discussions yet, but it's it was hard because I think for a while, whether it was because we were in college or whatever, we were just in survival mode. Mm-hmm. Like, let's just like get the laundry done, get a couch, get a futon. And I think everybody goes through that.
Oh, yeah.
But then I think that phase kind of like extended, partially because I was just like, so focused on my passion, so focused on like getting, being in the work I do. And I just became like work obsessed, which ties in with kind of what we were just talking about. And it didn't give me, wasn't giving myself the time to develop my tastes in a lot of things, but especially our home. And I started to realize the weight of that during the pandemic, because I was like at home more. Mm-hmm. And I started by trying to like redesign my home office a little bit, because I feel very lucky that I can have a home office. And then that kind of grew and grew, and I started taking, advice from other creative people who know more, like yourself, and so I guess what is like, how do you help, I guess, someone like me who's like I would say when you were talking about like your there's the clients who know their style and don't know their style. I guess I'm kind of in the middle where like when I see, just from like when I was working for the home beat for Cleveland Magazine, like I saw I could distinguish what I liked and what I didn't like.
Yeah.
And then but then when I put it in real time, like out of like the Pinterest board, I was like, I don't know where to even begin. So I guess how do you help people inject their or kind of find their personal home style?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like in that's like a tool that I kind of had to develop once I started understanding that people also, this is part of it, people will say, I like this, I like that. You have no idea what their version, their interpretation of those terms are. Like someone says, I like modern, I like contemporary, I like earthy, boho, natural, classic, traditional. I mean, what is that? I mean, there are technical meanings to these things, but what does that mean to that person? Because that's not something that, we go around like learning the specific meaning behind design trends and eras. So kind of dissecting like what do they mean, and I think in talking about that discovery phase with someone, it does require putting visuals in front of them. So often that does start in the form of Pinterest. I have like this intake form. I mean, that makes it sound medical. Like I have this, like, it's like a little questionnaire. I think it's I love doing like questionnaires. So I'm like, I hope people like get it and like feel excited and inspired. So I start with that, where it's really, and I think this is kind of good for any homeowner, whether you're doing this for yourself or like hiring a designer. I think this is really good for everyone. And I can go through some of like my questions that I ask, but, I want to know, first of all, like what spaces do we want to target? Because you can't do necessarily everything at once. So I think it's really good to like narrow your focus. Like, and that's how you're going to get more cohesion, something that feels a little bit more comprehensive. And I'm not someone who's going to, some designers do this. Everyone is going to have their different process, but some designers will put different like designs in front of you and say, pick option A, B, or C. And those things are like fully curated and thought out and sourced for the most part. And, you might be able to tweak some things from there, but like you've got a full look. And some people want that, they want to take the guessing out of it. They're like, oh yeah, that's good. Okay, I'll go with that space option. And I'm totally not like that. So yeah, I want to find out like what space we want to do. Sometimes it's partial spaces. Sometimes it's multiple spaces. I feel like my bread and butter tends to be between 1 and 3 rooms at a time. So either like full-blown renovation of those rooms or maybe just decorating. And oftentimes it's a hybrid. But yeah, narrow down your focus. I like to ask like, what is your minimal goals? And like, if you didn't have to think about budget, time, like what would your like end goal be? And it's really cool. Like, obviously I want to like achieve those minimum goals, but if we can start working towards like something that's even bigger, achieve things like outside of like what that baseline is, then I feel like you're getting, even more than what you were hoping. And I definitely always ask, if they have a Pinterest to share it. That's really enlightening, because they'll write in a description of their style, and it's so funny to see like what it visually looks like compared to like how they've like described it. It is so often not the same.
Yep. Yeah, that is. I mean, I know just from like when I was writing about home design, it was hard. It was like difficult to describe. Like, well, it helped when we had photos, obviously, but yeah, and there's all these like terms, like buzzwords, kind of like boho and blah blah blah. Like, and I know when we were like creating like stories, like we had to utilize a lot of those words. Even at times when I felt like it didn't like exactly like. Or when I interviewed an interior designer, I was like, how would you describe this? Is this boho or is this modern? And they're like, well, it's this, but it's also this. And it was so difficult to like include that nuance into each story, because I wanted to, because I'm like, I get what you're saying, but I need to make it like digestible to the person like, looking for inspiration in this home section. So yeah, that's really interesting.
It's really hard to put into words, like interior design style, any of that. Yeah, I mean, I like to ask like what elements they want to save versus splurge. You also get insight onto like their priorities more there. Do they, do they like secondhand furniture, which kind of going back to like the wedding guest dress, like you can't guarantee that you're going to find the perfect piece in their price range with the right dimensions, right style, all of that stuff, secondhand. But when clients are open to it, I have like really, I feel like casual relationships where like I'll text my clients and just say like, what do you think about this when I'm out, shopping and stuff. And that's always really fun and can kind of lead us to like some unexpected findings. And like I always ask like what role like they want me to play too, because that goes into like sort of like my project scope with them. Do they just want style advice? Do they want me to be more of a consultant? Do they want me to be like really, really hands-on? And so that can determine like how much time I'm going to spend with that project, which influences how much to charge, which influences how many other projects I can take on. It's kind of a difficult balance, but I feel like I'm like in a place where I'm finally figuring that out.
Yeah, because you said it's kind of like, it's a lot of different hats you're wearing with like, making these decisions about a person's home. Like you're part therapist, part, consultant. So it's good to know like, what they need from you. And I do want to now pivot a bit to your space specifically. So I've only seen it in photos, but I guess let's just talk about like, I know we just said how hard it is to put into words a person's home style, but tell me a little bit about, I guess, how you feel about your own like home decor style and just kind of specifically the aesthetics of your home, like how you've built it. I'm sure it's been like obviously a long process, but how would you describe it?
I mean, like the first word I always use is eclectic. Which also is a really great way to like excuse myself from putting my style into any boxes. But it is. Something about having a new home too is like I don't necessarily have to like respect the tradition of a century home. But I've been able, like the things that I do love, there are classic timeless elements that I do love that I've been able to like put into my house. I honestly, like I know we've talked about this before, like what I'm wearing is actually a really good representation of my style, because just thinking about like my living room, like I have a black velvet couch, like this really lovely like full grain leather, it's a day bed, but it's kind of like the color of my jacket. Like my rug is like honestly like a black, brown, and white pattern. I do like mixing a lot of neutral colors, but I don't feel like my home is like void of color either. Like I prefer like really, even if it's neutral, like I want it to feel very saturated. It's like a very rich, deep version of that color. Texture is really important to me. So like, making sure that like in my living room that the couches, the chairs, the sideboard, the coffee table, the lamps, the shelving, all of that are all different materials.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something, and it takes time typically to build something like that. But like I'm not like a matchy person, but I also like want the variety of finishes. And that's going to help, like, even if you are drawn to more neutrals, that's going to help it feel like more dynamic, more complex.
Yeah. And that makes it really be like eclectic, because it's like, I feel like sometimes you look, there isn't like a clear pattern of like, because I think like, most wood finishes are, maybe associated with like, I don't know, mid-century modern or whatever. But like if you're I think that's what I'm kind of drawn to as well. Also with my style at times, my own personal style, like how I dress myself too, like having that variety is like the most exciting thing to me. And I always just thought it was because I just like can't decide on one thing, but I think maybe this is the thing. Like it's just the combination of all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and probably similar to like when you're building an outfit too, like you have a few like foundational pieces.
Yeah.
Things that might feel like, I don't know, maybe you feel like they're kind of plain. But like when you do that, that gives you the opportunity, like the way that we accessorize or add layers or, shoes and jewelry and all of that. Like then that gives you the opportunity to play up with like other things, Like I have a lot of white walls, which I don't even know if I would do that today. Like I feel like I would have been more adventurous maybe. But again, this is 2017 that I started building this house. And but what it has done is now I get to put like so much art. And that is really, really, really important to me, is to like have as much original art as I can in my house. Like supporting local artists, and there are some secondhand pieces as well, but that personalizes a space more than anything. I have a lot of clients that do have me help choose art for their house, and that's like one of the most personal things, and so I feel that's intimidating, but it's also like you get this fully comprehensive room at the end, because that is really like the last kind of final touch, and it can change everything.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm kind of in a phase right now where I'm trying to even figure out what I like, and I'm trying to plan out this like gallery wall in my dining room, and I just have and I've just been collecting a couple pieces from you and just other pieces that I find either at the thrift or on Facebook Marketplace. And it can be, I feel like it can be intimidating to recommend it to people, but it also can be intimidating to like make that final decision. So I feel like ultimately you're really helping people guide them, because it's a lot of times also a lot of money, if you want an original piece and stuff. But I feel like that definitely changes so much in a space. And in terms of vintage shopping, so I wanted to kind of pick your brain about that a little bit too. So I guess whether it's for like, obviously this varies depending on if you're shopping for like a client or for your home, but I guess let's say for like, your style in your home, like what kind of pieces like in a vintage or secondhand store are you drawn to home wise?
One of the easiest things to pick up are chairs. I use them as not chairs all the time. I will put them in a corner. They have books on them. They have plants on them. Like if you have like a little space where you're just like, I don't know what to do there, you can put a chair, get some great coffee table books, something like that, put them on. You could layer your blankets. You could put a plant on it, put a piece of art above, and now you've got like a really cute little vignette where you probably didn't have to spend like a ton of money. And it's also very easy to like move and change. So side chairs are honestly one of like the best things to pick up when thrifting. Oh my God, if you can find stools, that's great. I do a lot of like vintage secondhand frames.
Yeah.
So I do it for my own art, but I'll use it in my home. I usually have like kind of like a stock of frames. I'm low right now, but like, sometimes you score really well and you can get like 5, 6 frames in, one run. Knowing like, take a measuring tape with you. Like I literally keep one in my bag.
Yes.
If you know that you're going somewhere, I just keep one in my purse at all times at this point, but like if you know you're going somewhere, just like I have in my notebook, like for clients, like, I take measurements of like the places where we're looking for specific furniture. So if I find something, I know whether or not it's going to fit. And in my own home, like I know what length or, what height of something can fit in my trunk, like things like that are, it feels like kind of no brainer when you hear it, but like.
It's important though, because I think it's again, I'm trying to train myself to be a better home shopper in general, which can apply not just to vintage shopping, but to just even just going into a regular store or online shopping, because, with clothes, like I'm fine. It's and you don't have to think about these things like, will the shirt fit in my trunk?
Put it on. Yeah,
exactly. Or will it fit you? Yeah, you can try it on, and you can't try it on into an item in your house, while you're still at the store. So
yeah,
it's all these other spatial awareness things that you have to learn.
Yeah. And if you've done that, I wish I had it feels like a cheesy term. If you've done that discovery phase or whatever, for yourself, I feel like you can then more confidently go and, and not to be so strict about it either. You want to go in and be like, okay, I think that maybe it's not exactly what I had in mind, but I think this could work for that corner that has felt empty for a long time. Yeah. So side chairs,
love that,
stools, frames, glasses, especially if you have any open shelving. I love beautiful vintage glasses, and you can find so many good stuff at the thrift. And I'm cool with not even having full sets of stuff. I have a built-in bar, and I just have a bunch of mix and match glasses in there, and it's really fun when people come over, because then they can go up to the bar and pick the glass that speaks to them.
I love that.
And then it also makes it easier when you're hosting people. Everyone's glass is different, so you don't have to worry about that either. Yeah, I mean, there's art is really fun to find secondhand too, and you can also find a lot of secondhand original art. And it's often going to be cheaper than when you were buying from an artist directly.
Yeah. I've just never even looked for it. It's never really even the first section I've looked in at a thrift store. But then recently I've been thinking about it more, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of cool stuff here. And, but again, it takes time to develop it. And then I guess to also then loop it a little bit back around to your personal style, which is how you get dressed. And you mentioned a little bit, I love how you talked about how your house is kind of a bit similar to even your outfit now. Any other similarities or differences you've been thinking about or noticing?
Yeah, I think when I think about the areas in both clothing and interiors where I push boundaries, I find that those kind of look similar too. I love natural materials when it comes to both interiors and clothing. For clothes, if it's 100% cotton, if it's linen, if it's leather. I don't hate on polyester though. I think that there's a really good place for that. But and there's some good man-made materials for interiors as well. But that's definitely an overlap. And then where I push the boundary is I feel I can go a little bit of glam with some stuff. So for me, I like wearing a lot of jewelry, and I'll mix metals. I can do that in my house too. And I love for finishes, instead of a brushed gold or brushed, silver or nickel or something, I want a really rich, unlacquered brass or chrome, or, these metallics that are going to be super shiny or almost feel not bejeweled, but it feels like jewelry almost, for your finishes in your home. I got this beautiful chrome kind of finished vase in a secondhand shop in Detroit not long ago, and it's my favorite thing. And now I'm also noticing how I'm wearing more of my silver jewelry that I'd put away for a long time. But if it's a muted kind of silver, that brushed nickel or whatever, I'm not touching it, you know, but I want it to feel glossy, like a bolder version of that metal. So I'm seeing that right now, in terms of that kind of adding a little bit of glam, a little bit of sparkle in both. And I love doing makeup, like that's, you know, because my style can sometimes lean a little bit like masculine or androgynous. Like I think like the fact that I do like to play with makeup a lot is maybe a little bit unexpected. And so I feel like that comes through in my house sometimes. I don't know, maybe that's with like the art, like I love figurative like art, like figurative portraits.
Yeah.
So anything with like faces and oftentimes like it's not realism though. Like it doesn't necessarily look exactly like a face.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like an abstract portrait.
Yeah.
So I feel like the way that I love makeup and faces, and so like that comes through in like the art that I'm drawn to as well.
Oh, I love that. It's like, oh, I love that. I love how those things can like translate in different ways, and how you notice it too, because I think it's, there's definitely those patterns there. Anyway, it's okay. It won't come through. I don't know what that is.
I think like when you do so many different things, then you start, I don't know. I mean, I've started, noticing those patterns, and that's really cool too. And it helps inform a lot of like what I'm drawn to, and what my bias is too, because I very much design for the client. So if I know what my bias is, you know, I know what I'm personally drawn to. Sometimes I know like I need to break that for particular projects, which is important. But then maybe I do want to push like my perspective a little bit on their space too.
Yeah.
You know, so knowing like where to draw back and where to push.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think we are already beyond an hour and a half.
Jesus.
So if it's all right with you, I just want to close out with, I kind of just like to ask people if there's anything they want to give like a shout out to. Like it can be Cleveland, not Cleveland, local, not local, but brands you're loving at the moment, like a piece like anything, just anything you want to give a shout out to recently that you are either consuming, bought, loving.
Yeah. Well, I probably should share some of my favorite vintage stores, especially Helm, because Nicola has been in my corner for so long. She is such a big reason for a lot of my success. She's been carrying my art consistently. I mean, she's in my neighborhood and she's just like the sweetest person. And I know you came to like our little party that we had a few months ago. And just like her curation is so her. You know,
beautiful.
it's not so much of an eclectic store. Like it really does have a point of view. But it's also not like so strict in that, you know, like the way that I hand off my art to her and then she displays it in a way and I don't even have to worry about it because I know it's going to be beautiful. She's like a dream partner to have with that. And All Things For You, which is right next door, they just suffered like a really terrible flood.
Yeah.
So when they get back up and running, like go shop there.
Definitely.
There's so many vendors who I'm sure lost.
Yeah, I saw that on their Instagram. I was like, God darn. Yeah, our basement flooded and we have some just like old furniture down there that I was just like sad about. So I can't even imagine like in like a vintage store like that. God, that's awful.
Yeah.
No, those are two of my favorites too in Cleveland. Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're not in Cleveland, if you're ever coming through looking for vintage home items, Helm and All Things For You. Yeah. Oh my God.
Their price points are wild. Like I feel like you go to other cities and we have such a good collection. I think, you know, being in like an older city, but like also being in like not a crazy expensive city, like to get the quality that we have at the price points that we have it's really special, I think.
I think it applies for clothing too. Like there's just so many curated vintage boutiques that have like really good quality items, and like I've heard literally from the mouths of people from bigger cities being like, this is so cheap. Well, I just know from my experience too, just like I try to go to New York every year. I'm going next weekend actually, and when I was like vintage shopping there, I still haven't seen the breadth of vintage there, to be fair. But one thing I do like about Cleveland is like there's like I know I pretty much know of every single store.
Yeah.
Not every single one, but more or less like the big ones. And when I discover a new one, that's even more amazing. But I'm like, you have a good grasp of like the different price points and how much you need for an investment piece and stuff like that. So it's just approachable, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And being, from Florida, I can tell you this is unique, like the price and the quality, but also the quantity of stores that we have too. Like, I moving here expanded my knowledge and awareness of style so much because I don't think it exists, where I'm from the way that it does here. So maybe that's a really good note to end on, that I think Cleveland is very underrated when it comes to the access that we have for things like clothes and home goods.
I know. I always it's always so hard to put into words because it's like I don't want to sound like I'm just like it's like, of course it's my hometown, so I have like a soft spot for it, but what you just said, like as someone who's come from a different place, like there is like so much underrated beauty in like the art community and the vintage community. And one thing I always say is like, and what I've learned is like, I think the big thing about Cleveland is like you sometimes have to look for it.
Oh yeah.
And I think people kind of sometimes are like, well, where's all the insert anything X good restaurants or X like good vintage? It's like, well, you got to do a little bit of searching, which I think is like at any city, but I think the bigger ones, like you go to New York and it's just like everything's like at your fingertips,
right.
You don't have to go very far. It's just the nature of the city. But here it's like when you find it, it is like, and I mean, this is just generally how I felt the last couple of years. Like it's like the most beautiful surprise. And it's like, it's amazing when a city like proves you wrong a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm, as someone who was like grown up here, and I've had this like ever since I was like younger, like, oh, well, I need to leave Cleveland one day. I need to like blah blah blah. There's none of this here, and I've been proved wrong. Like,
yeah. Well, you know that I'm critical of things about this city too, but I feel like that's something we can agree on is like there is such an industry here that feels a little hidden, maybe a little untapped, maybe a little below the surface, but it's really good.
Oh yeah, and it's there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. We have a whopping hour and a half, I think, of our discussion here. So thank you to everyone who listened, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you. This was fun.